Hi, my name is Ayomide. Welcome to the World Without People podcast, where we journey into some pretty amazing stories of everyday people. I believe strongly in the interconnectedness of our human experience, that we can color and enrich our lives by sharing and learning from our lived experiences. In this concise podcast, I bring to you engaging conversations like a chapter in a vibrant book designed to motivate and encourage and challenge and, of course, brighten your day. My guests also get to ask me one question, and there's no telling what they might come up with. So thank you for tuning in. Grab your coffee or tea, or listen on the go to some amazing stories of real people. After all, what is a world without people? Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The World Without People. My name is Ayamide, and I'm so excited to have you here as per usual. I'm always excited to do these, but I'm really excited because I have my sis all the way from Calgary, Canada. Whoop, 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 whoop. I call her sis because, I'm Yoruba, typical Yoruba girl. Like, I got to put my respect. But Lauretta is Lauretta Ovadje. Do I pronounce? I always feel like I don't pronounce that right.
I mean, it's pretty much the way it's spelled, Ovadje.
Okay, Ovadje, right?
Ovadje.
Ovadje. Okay.
Yes.
Did you get a lot of like, especially coming to America?
No, I used to get made fun of by friends in Unilag, actually. There were these guys who would, this one guy who would say, like, my name sounds like a virgin.
I love it.
And I really, so,
I love it.
but yeah, that's the only thing that used to happen in terms of my surname. Otherwise, yeah, people have been typically just like you, just ask, "Oh, how do you pronounce your last name?" And I'm like, Maji. Yeah.
Nice.
So
And sis is, and I'm going to call her sis throughout. It's just easier for me. Sorry, guys. She's a public health expert like me. But the interesting thing is that we both were in Michigan apparently around about the same time, I think, right?
I was there from 2007 to 2016 ish, generally.
And I left in like 2008. So maybe that's why we didn't really meet, but you met my
Yeah,
brother, right?
yeah, yeah.
And then we met at an APHA conference, which we're both public health experts,
Hmm.
and then all these connections. Like, oh, you know your brother. Yes, so public health is the best. Thank you very much. But
But
let me start.
you didn't realize I knew your brother because I knew your name and your last name, and then it just didn't click because you guys don't look alike. So I think that it's like I said, I told you you don't look alike, so it didn't come to mind until I was like, wait, I know an Ifel, and that's when I sent you the message. I was like, are you related to him? And you were like, oh, that's my brother. And I was like,
Yeah.
oh,
Yeah,
okay.
emphasis on that's my younger brother. I just, because people be taking the piss. Like, he's my younger brother. I just want y'all to know.
Older. I actually thought he was even older than you until you now younger brother. And I was like, oh wow. Well, you look, I've told you this many times. You definitely look younger than your age. So
It's my birthday month.
okay, how have you celebrated?
No celebrations. I don't do celebrations. Okay, I always go on a trip. I go on an annual birthday trip. So,
Okay,
funds towards
here.
my birthday trip. Anyway,
Yeah. So where
I pick.
have you where you're going? Not yet.
I wanted to go to West Virginia. I know it's like very lame, and it's just down the street. But I feel like I haven't really been. And I like even when I go to like places like Delaware, Connecticut, like it was one of those things like I was like, oh, I know I've passed here, or maybe I've even stopped here, but like I never actually toured. So that's why.
Okay. And I guess you can see my face, and I'm wondering what's in West Virginia that you want to go look at. But
It's just the ticking off of my 50 states in America. And so it's just trying to, I always do a museum, I find a lighthouse and something else. But, anyways, this is not about me. So, back to the story. And so, and with that, like, we literally met like one time, right? That was like that APHA conference, maybe that one night. And then that was it. Like we've been on since, went out a couple times in Lagos. We happened to be in Lagos at the same time a couple years later, or was it even that same year? No, a couple years later. And honestly, like we don't talk all the time, but like we'll now talk and then we'll talk 1 hour, 2 hours to catch up with life. And
All
so I'm
right.
very, very happy. For real. I'm very, very happy to have you here, sis. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Well, thank you for having me.
Okay, so you already told us Unilag, for example, Michigan, and I've mentioned Canada. Walk me through that journey. So Lagos to America and now to Canada. Just why the changes that have occurred in you as a person as a result of all these, things, what you've learned as a result of all this movement, I will say.
Mm. So wait, it sounds like you have multiple questions. So let's pop our brakes and go back. So the first
Okay, did I
question was,
tell you that she's also a professor? So let's go back. We hear some things today. Just understand that the framework is that she's a professor, she's a PhD as well. So, sis, let me come back. The question is, as someone who's migrated across different continents back and forth, right? Because you've also like come and then gone back kind of thing. What
Mhm.
would you say has been some of your most interesting experience? What would you say has been changes within you as a person? And what advice will you give to someone who's afraid of change? It's still multiple questions, but it's all related. Thank you very much.
Oh, wow.
We just started.
Okay, so I guess my journey started when I left Unilag in my third year actually. And it was a result of a few things happening at the same time. I had like 3 or 4 carryovers for whatever reason. Didn't make any sense to me because I'd never had a carryover in my entire life. And I was very, very sure that they had sold my results.
Hmm.
And that was a thing that used to happen. I don't know if it still happens now, but it used to happen then. And so it just didn't make any sense that I had 3 carryovers at the end of my third year, going to my fourth year when I was about to, I had 1 more year left to graduate. And, at the time, my mom was actually, I guess, insistent on her children going abroad to study, like, of course, obviously, like better education. And so she was able to, I guess, prevail on my dad. And he let me finally go when I had those 3 carryovers. Of course, I was like, yeah, I don't know how this is going to happen. And I don't know how I'm going to stay at Unilag because I'm like 3 carryovers, that's how many extra years. Anyways, long story short, I went to the US in 2003. I went to Lincoln University, which is the first HBCU in the US. And I then left Lincoln to University of Michigan, where I guess our paths indirectly crossed through your brother. I was there for grad school. I went straight from undergrad to a PhD program because I had also, in the bid to not stay at home during the summer, I would always find something to do. So, like, Lincoln at the time obviously had like been a recipient of certain like grants and things like that. People, had all of these opportunities that I was able to, go to summer school my first summer at University of Michigan, University of Maryland, actually, Eastern Shore. The next few summers after that, I did internships because my first summer, like I said, I went to University of Maryland. I keep saying Michigan, but Maryland Eastern Shore. And as a result of that summer school, I networked, I guess, not intentionally, but I guess I caught the eye of a professor who was like, I'm having this, environmental like project next summer. Are you interested in coming back? And so I went back that next summer to do an internship and pretty much had an internship every single summer after that. And I guess was not typical as an undergrad to have 3 internship experiences. So by the time I was applying to grad school, I had that research experience,
Right.
which first advice for people who may be scared is always take advantage of opportunities because you never know what you're going to end up in. Like I said, when I was taking the opportunity, it was just really, I didn't want to stay at home for 4 months and I wanted to make money.
I know that's right.
I'm going to learn. I'm going to be getting paid at the same time. So what's the barrier here? And it wasn't like the entire 4 months. It was actually like 2 months out of the 4 months. So I would still have time to actually have a break too. But like I said, there will be some productive part of that. Maybe that was the
Right.
Nigerian in me who was, trying to, we don't know how to sit in one place and
Right.
rest. But anyways, like I said, thankfully had those experiences, and I learned a lot of what I did not like. At the time when I was applying to grad school, I ended up applying to grad school because I knew I wanted to have an advanced degree, but I knew I was not going to be a medical doctor.
Right.
My parents had trained me all my life to think I wanted to be a medical doctor because they were both medical doctors. So it was normal to obviously, like, follow in their footsteps because I liked the sciences too. So when I was at Lincoln, I was a pre-med student. But after my first year, definitely, I knew I didn't want to be a medical doctor because I think it dawned on me that medicine also involves cutting people up.
Right. Right.
Lord, you're gonna see, some gory stuff. And
Mm.
I thankfully was self-aware enough at the time to realize that, hey, Auntie, you see blood or you have a paper cut and you are yelling like, life has ended. It might not be a good idea to go into medicine. Anyway, so like I said, I started to look at other options and I spoke to my mom at the time. Thankfully, she was still alive. And so that's when I actually realized my mother had a master's of public health
Yeah.
because she gave me other options. I mean, she said do your research, but one thing you could look at, if since I know you do like the sciences and I know you do like biology, you could also look at public health and see if that could be a potential, source of interest. So, anyways, like I said, she put me on that path, and I, like I said, took opportunities, and I decided to go to grad school to get a PhD because I also had experiences throughout my, summers. They had people come and talk to the undergrad students. And so we had a few PhD students. And so it was knocked into my head that if you're going to a PhD program, let it be paid for. Do not pay out of
Right.
pocket to
Mm.
go to a PhD program. So
Again,
thankfully, I was
smart.
focused when I was going to grad school. I applied actually, like, I applied to a lot of schools, a lot of good schools. But I ended up making the choice that I made in terms of going to Michigan because they were the only ones that did not, first of all, tell me to go get a master's. Because schools like Johns Hopkins and University of Massachusetts were like, we'll, admit you into the master's program. And I'm like, that's not what
Right.
I applied for. I applied for the PhD program.
Mhm.
Anyways, like I said, I was focused. And so ended up getting into Michigan. I remember the director at the time, we had a phone conversation and he was like, one of the reasons why they admitted me was what I said, like the
Right.
fact that I had a lot of research experience. So I had proved to them, there was evidence that I could thrive in a
Right.
research
Environment.
environment. And so, like I said, it was not many of us. While I was in the School of Public Health, I met one other person who also did not have a master's. We actually ended up
Mm.
being like school buddies the entire time. Like, we were each other's like backbone. So it was an awesome experience. After Michigan, I had a postdoctoral fellowship where I ended up going to Ghana. So I stayed in, Michigan for a few months and then I went to Ghana. That was one of the, I guess, incentives for me to actually take the postdoc because I wanted to kind of get a bit more hands-on environmental health research. Because again, my PhD was in environmental health, but it was in environmental epi.
Right.
So I was a bit more like health behavior ish,
Right.
looking at like the different aspects of the health of the environment, not just the physical environment,
Right.
but how we make decisions because of our physical environment, how we make decisions because of how our nutritional like environment,
Right.
the fact that you are in a place that doesn't have farmers markets, it
Yep. Hmm.
makes a difference in the kind of food that you're going to buy, right?
Right.
So those were the interests I had at the time. I was in my PhD program, so I focused, like I said, on research that kind of gave me a bit more experience in that. And then I ended up trying to do a slightly different, still within environmental health, of course, but more occupational health.
Right.
And so, like I said, I had the opportunity to go to Ghana. I was there for 6 months and then came back to Michigan. And then I stayed in Michigan for a couple more years. trying to figure out, okay, what I wanted to do. Because when I came to school in the US, my thought process was I wanted to go back to Nigeria. So I wasn't really looking to apply to anything to stay in the US. So everything that I applied for was international development type like work, and it was outside the US. Or even if I applied to the US office, I knew that they had offices outside the US. So
Right.
at the end of the day, most likely if you're doing projects in Senegal or Gambia, wherever, you're going to go to those countries. You're not going to stay in the US,
Right.
like all the time, pretty much. So, anyways, that was the way that I figured I would try to go back to Nigeria. Things didn't work out that way, of course. We planned, but God has,
Yeah.
plans for us, and so I've learned to, of course, trust Him.
Right.
That was definitely something that this journey of migration, that was the big thing that I would say I took out of that I had
Mm,
to learn to trust God and not trust man. Because I think in
right.
my previous experiences, it was always, oh, I know this person, they will, my network was pretty much how I got things. So I trusted that there will always be somebody to, I could ask
Mm,
questions, or I could be like, I need
open
this,
the
and
door, basically.
to me, because that's how
Right.
it happened. But it happened that way because God allowed it to happen.
Right.
Um, so, anyways, I ended up, like I said, going back to Nigeria. I had actually applied for one teaching position, because even as a PhD person, I guess technically most of the time we're seen to go into academia, but I
Right.
didn't want to go into academia actually. And
Same.
that's one of the things that I would say, that also, like Michigan, like I know they kind of get dinged on that sometimes, that
Yeah.
they have so many like PhD students or graduates, but they don't tend to actually go into academia. Like majority of them go into practice,
Right.
doing actually like public health practice. And I was like, because they are probably also recruiting students who are going to go into practice because of the
Right.
messaging that they're giving the students,
Right.
right? So when they were recruiting me, all I saw was, oh, you can go into the field, you can get your hands dirty, kind of thing. And
Right.
that's why I went there,
Right.
because it showed me that I would get the experiences that I wanted to get.
Right.
Anyway, so like I said, I didn't apply to any academic positions until a couple years after I graduated from grad school. And I applied to, like I said, one teaching position. And that was because when I read, I don't know what it was. I don't know, again, like I said, it's all God, because it was a position at my undergrad, my old undergrad, my alum, at Lincoln. I normally don't go on Lincoln's websites, not to do anything, especially not to go to the career section. But for whatever reason, that day I was actually at a friend's wedding. I was in Houston. I wasn't in Michigan. I was in Houston, getting ready for a friend's wedding later in the evening. And I was on my computer, and I somehow went on Lincoln's website, and I went to the career section, and I saw this position in the health sciences department, and I clicked on it, and I'm like, this position actually sounds like it was made for me. Like, this is a
Mm,
perfect position. If I was going to teach, this is the perfect position. It was a position to help them start up a public health program.
mm,
And it was, again, some of the courses that they wanted were courses that I had a background in. I had epi background, I had a health behavior background, because as a result of my work, I had to kind of, pull
juggle.
from different areas. So I wasn't a, diehard epi person.
Right.
100%. Anyways, so like I said, I see that position, and I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna reach out to I reach out to the professors that I knew that were still there, that hadn't left. And I was just like, I see this position, and I just kind of wanted to get your sense of, do you think it's something that I should be applying for? Because they had worked at Lincoln for many years, so they could tell me better. Anyway, so like I said, I spoke to a couple of professors, and they were like, yeah, you definitely apply, and see if, you get the job. Anyways, I apply, get an interview, and, I do that interview, and then I forget about the job, because I guess, it's the summer, so everybody's gone on break. I'm doing other things. And then one day I've got a phone call from the vice president saying, oh, do you have time for a quick chat right now? And I'm like, uh, okay,
Sure.
sure. I was on my way. I was actually on my way to Chicago from Michigan. I was going for some events. It may sound like I go out all the time, but anyways, I got this phone call. I'm on my way on the highway to Chicago, and I'm like, okay, sure, I can talk. And so I have my, I guess second interview, because I guess they had the people who had interviewed me had, given their recommendations to the higher ups to then make the choice as to, this is who interviewed, and these are the top candidates. So you guys, go ahead and choose out of the top candidates who you want to actually hire, kind of thing. Anyway, so I have the conversation with her via phone, and then, I like I said, I'm doing my thing, and then later, maybe in the month, I get a call actually from. Actually, no, I think I didn't get a call. I actually reached out to them because I hadn't heard anything.
Mhm.
And so I reached out to the person who one of the people who interviewed me, like with the chair of the department that I was interviewing at. And so she then says that she's not meant to tell me, but because it's not official yet, but unofficially they have decided to hire me, pretty much.
Awesome.
Because I was reaching out to her because I was like, I haven't heard anything, and she was just like, that it's okay, we're just a bit slow, but rest assured, you're the person that has been, they've made the decision that you're the person we are taking.
Right.
And I was very excited, of course, because I was just like, that's awesome. That is awesome. So anyways, all of this is happening. This is like 2016, my summer has ended. And then as an international student, there's obviously a specific period of time that you're supposed to get a job within, or you leave the US.
Right.
And like I said, I had a PhD. I could have filed for myself, but I didn't want to stay in the US. So, I was just like, okay, you know what? I'm going to leave the US at this point. I and actually to leave the US. So I had even bought a ticket. I had bought a ticket for the end of the year, So this happened, all this happened actually before I got the Lincoln thing. And so when I got the Lincoln thing, I was like, okay. So I guess, I told them, I spoke to the HR people. I was like, this is the situation.
Right.
You guys need to do a filing for me before this date, because this is the date that my, I guess, visa expires or whatever. So if you guys put in an application, then I can stay in the US. If you guys don't put in an application before that date, then I have to leave. And then whenever you guys are sorted out, then I come back into the US. And I was like, I'm fine doing either one. I'm just like, obviously, I don't know which one might be quicker, but if you obviously want me to start by the semester coming, then you may want to obviously get this application in, quickly. Anyways, all of that to say, I end up leaving for Nigeria because every time I'll check in, they're like, oh, we are doing XYZ, we're doing XYZ. The application had not been put in by the date that I was leaving. And so I left. And I was happy because I actually was like, you know what, it would give me time to actually go home and have an actual break, because I felt like I had a break like pretty much throughout grad school. I'd been go the entire time. And I was like, it will give me time to obviously go home, rest up, have fun with my family, hang out with them, just see people and all of that kind of stuff. And every time I go to Lagos, it's always a good time. And so that's what I was looking forward to. I end up going to Lagos, like I said, and then I think I land in Lagos November, I think towards the end of November anyways, 2016. And the plan, obviously, again, is to start at Lincoln for January 2017. So the goal is that by, January, they would have sorted out my work visa. So all I have to do is go to the US Embassy, show my passport, stamp the visa, because obviously we got approved from the US. Like I said, planned. I was in Nigeria for a year and a half.
Wow. I did not know this bit.
Because by January, when I was expecting that I was going to go back to the US, still didn't look like any traction had been made, So yeah, I was like, you know what? Maybe this is, again, this is me wanting to stay in Nigeria anyways. And I'm just like, this is a chance for me to actually see how things work in Nigeria, in the public health space in Nigeria. And so I, from January 2017, I just pretty much started to like network and look for, roles. Obviously, I told my dad, who obviously has his medical colleagues who had, contacts, obviously, like also in like schools. He was like, do you want to teach and all of that kind of, I was like, well, I don't know, but, let's see what the opportunities are. So I put out feelers to every single person that I knew that I'm in Nigeria for, I don't know, it looks like I'm going to be in Nigeria for at least a few more months. So I'm looking for something to do during this period. And so if you know of anyone who's hiring, please let me know so that, I can apply. And then of course, I like I said, I just pretty much tell them, these are the different things I'm interested in. So a friend of mine who works at the American Embassy, one day she reached out to me and she's like, someone she was talking to knows somebody else who's looking for somebody that has my expertise. She was going to send me the link and I could look at the website and see if I was interested in talking to, the person who's recruiting. And so she sent me a link and I say, oh, wow, this actually looks really cool. So yes, I would like to talk to the person. And so she gives my contact information to the person who is supposed to contact me. Okay. This is like January, February, right? A few months go by. But like I said, I'm, again, doing other things, looking at other opportunities. I still haven't found anything, but I'm not stressing myself because I'm like, I'm still enjoying my life and I'm going to, be present as much as possible in this moment that I'm here. And then I decide to do, there's like a course called Master Life.
Mm,
Sorry.
mm,
It's a Christian program, and my church that I attend in Lagos, that I grew up in, was actually like, they were hosting the course. And so I
okay.
decided that while I was, going to be, I'm here for a few months, like I said, and so I was just going to take that course.
Mm,
So the first nights that I get there, everybody's introducing themselves, and then someone says something that sounds familiar. Like that sounds like an organization I've heard of. So the person introduces herself and says she's the managing director of the organization. And I'm like, I feel like I know that name. Actually, she just said she's the managing director of the organization. She didn't mention the organization. But she said her
mm,
first name. And so I was like, I feel that
right,
that name is familiar. So at the end, of the program, the thing ends that evening. Before I go home, I'm like, oh yeah, I should go say hi to her and see if this is the person I think this person is.
right.
Because it's like the person that had been recruiting for the person
That
with my
role.
background, right, for their organization. So I'm going up to her and she's actually walking towards me and she's like, "Are you Loretta?" And I'm like, "Yes."
Are
And
you?
then she like, "Are you Loretta from?" Like she mentioned the mutual friend that we have. And she was like, "Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. I've been meaning to call you, but it has been so hectic," because she was pretty much a one woman show and it was a lot of work. And so, anyways, she is like, "It's an awesome thing that we've met because now we can actually meet, like, like
Right,
actually."
yeah, yeah,
And so that's how we set up an appointment to actually have a conversation and decide if, we were going to move forward together. Well, that
right.
was what she ended up saying. I just thought I was quote unquote interviewing for a position. Said I got there, we talk, and then she's like, I mean, it sounds like we were both on the same page. How soon can you start? Pretty much was what she said. And I was like, oh, okay, I can start as soon as you need me. I'm here, I'm not doing anything. And that's how I started working at DRASA, which is the Dr. Ameyo Stella Adadevo Health Trust.
Yeah.
And it was a fabulous time. It was a lot of work, of course. You've worked in Nigeria, so know, how intense
Mm,
jobs can be in that country, especially. And it was a very impactful time in my life. I still obviously still have ties to them. And, you know, it's led to a great relationship, of course, also with, the family. And coming back to the position that I said I had in the US, like I said, I started working at JASA and I was, like, okay, y'all are not serious. I'm not even going to stress myself.
mm,
I'm happy I'm here in Lagos. My friends in the US always used to like, they would send me messages on like Snapchat or Instagram and be like, "You look like you're having so much fun. Are you sure you come back to the US?" And I'm like, I mean, I don't know.
right.
And they're like, "Well, we won't be surprised if you don't come back to the US because you just don't look like someone that wants to come back to the US." And I'm like, you know what? You're right. Anyways, the people at Lincoln, then, I get a call pretty much a year later
Mm,
that says, "Can you reapply for the position that you applied for before?" And I'm like, "Why?
no.
What?" Yeah, because I was like, "What is different now? Like, why should I go through all of that stress to apply?" And then the woman is like, "You know what?" And she apologized, of course, but she's like, "Someone was pretty much sitting on my application at the school."
Wow.
And she didn't know because that's not her area. She's the chair of the department. So HR is supposed to be doing the work, right? And so she thought the HR person was doing their work, and apparently they did not do anything. They cannot find my information. And then technically I guess, stuff expires after a year. She's like, they have decided that they're just going to hire an external counsel to,
Right,
to, to do the work visa for me. And so they needed me to actually apply again so they could have that
right.
information to then put in the work visa. And I'm like, just, I was torn because I was like, again, like I said, that position, it was like perfect, I felt. But I was just like, I'm not sure if I can trust you guys. Like, what,
Mm,
I was like, okay, you know what? I'm just gonna sleep on this. And the next day, I was like, okay, you know what? I will apply. So
mm,
ask them, send me whatever links I needed to, get, and then I applied again, and then they hired an external firm, law firm, to do my application, and they did an expedited work visa. So I was
mm,
back in the US. Well, I was told that my application was approved and my work visa was ready, and I just needed to go to the US embassy to, like I said, show my passport, and then get the visa put in the passport to come back. And so I did all of that while I was also in Lagos, gallivanting and enjoying myself. My sister schooled in Canada. And so one of my sisters, who was a lawyer at the time, was like, you should apply for a Canadian permanent residency because they are looking for skilled workers. You most likely get the PR very quickly, that kind of thing. But I didn't listen to her. I was just like, I'm not interested in coming to Canada. Like, even this US,
mm,
because, like I said, the work visa has been processed, and I was still
mm,
waffling. I actually did not make up my mind about leaving Nigeria until like a month before I left.
mm,
Anyways, so like I said, in this 1.5 years of me in Lagos, I get the work visa towards the 1 year mark. Like I said, my sister was like, I really want you, really think that you should apply, do this application. And she was chasing me up and down the place. And I was like, I am not interested. And she actually did the application. Like, she literally would just call me and be like, I need this information from you. Give it to me. And then she
mm.
shared my information on the website. So I was like, I mean, do what you want to do, but like I said, I'm not coming to Canada. It's not in my plan. So she, like I said, does the application because, like I said, Canada was, is big on family ties. And it was actually because of one of my brothers. Like, we wanted to be able to bring him, like him have access to
Right,
better educational opportunities in Canada, because the US, well, Canada was
mm,
seen to be cheaper than the US.
right,
And like I said, we do this, she does this application, and then I get a notification saying my application was, approved. I've been invited to apply to, well, to get the PR, I could send my passport or something. I forget what they call it. And so I was like, okay, sure, I'll send my passport, to the Canadian people, so they put that information in there. And then I was like, I'm coming back to the US, so I could just cross into, from Michigan, I could cross into
Canada.
Windsor, land, and then go back to Michigan, right? And, move myself from Michigan, because that's where all my stuff was, in Michigan. And I was moving to Pennsylvania, where Lincoln was. So I do that move, like I said, from Lagos, land in Michigan. I stay in Michigan for a couple of weeks, meet up, with the people that I had left behind. And then I moved to Pennsylvania, where I was for about 3 years. And then in 2020, at the beginning of 2020, actually, I had realized that even though I had the PR and I had actually come into Canada a few times, I thought I would be able to just maintain my residency by coming into Canada, going back to the US, because there's a number of days that they tell you that you have to spend in Canada to be able to maintain your PR, right? So I thought I would be able to do
Right.
that in 5 years. That,
Mm,
by 2020, because I got the PR in 2018, 2 years after, in 2020, I realized that I may have to physically move to Canada or I would lose the PR. And at that time, of course, things had changed, right? I had decided that even though, yes, I love Nigeria and all of that, but I felt like, career wise, I would want to do something else, somewhere else,
right,
right?
right.
So I ended up, I was still with Lincoln at the time. I hadn't left Lincoln, but I was obviously like looking at what my potential next steps would be, because I had already helped start up the program, and I obviously could have stayed there for longer. A lot of people stay in academia for, 20, 30, 40 years, right? Like, but
Mm,
that's not really me. I
mm,
just do not, I don't know if it's maybe just a me thing, but I
right,
feel like after a few years, I may get bored, and I don't
right.
necessarily want to get bored. And so I start to move around, kind of thing. Anyways, so I had decided that, I would most likely have to do a physical move at the beginning of 2020. But then we know what happened, right? A couple months later, in March, the world shut down. of course, the world shut down in terms of, in-person stuff, but we're doing things online. And so, just as with the rest of the world, Lincoln, of course, moved to online teaching. And
Right.
so I pretty much spent the next couple of years teaching online at Lincoln. I had decided, like I said, I was going to leave Lincoln. I had actually given my notice in January that I was going to
Right.
leave because I was going to Canada. But then, like I said, the pandemic
Right.
hit. And so that kind of changed things because they were going to move online. And
Yeah.
so they wanted me to stay on because I could teach,
Right.
right, online from wherever I was in the
Yes.
world.
Online. Yeah.
So it was just pretty much, when do I move to Canada? But then I couldn't move to Canada pretty much till the end of the year because
So it.
Canada was quite restrictive at the time. So the borders were closed. And I didn't want to drive and find that a border is closed because that would be a very long drive to find that, because you just didn't know what was open. This week,
Right.
this is open, the next week, the other one is open, and the other is shut. So things were just, it was like a moving goalpost all the time. Long story short, I ended up moving anyways. Like December 2020, I moved to Canada and I stayed with Lincoln, like I said, to 2021. And then, they're, of course, resumed in person. And I'm like, well, I'm not coming back in person. So if y'all need me to teach online, you have me. But if not, I will, happily move on somewhere else. And so that's what happened. I ended my contract with them at the end of 2021. And then I actually had to take a break. So I had to take a career break in terms of a mental and emotional break. Apart from
Yeah.
physical break, because I realized I was actually burnt out. I didn't realize I was
Mm.
burnt out until the break happened, where my body
Mm.
actually forced me to take a break. And so I was burnt out. And so I didn't start applying to positions in Canada until like a few months after, like pretty
Mm.
much end of the year 2021. So I, of course, start applying, but then I'm like, okay, so do I want to, I had to do a rethink, obviously, of my career goals. Like, what do I really want to do right now? Being
Mm.
that I'm in Canada, I'm in a different place, and, I could go different ways. Like, I don't have to necessarily continue on the path that I've been on. And this is me again trying to, like I said, make sure that I'm choosing things that I'm not going to be
Mm.
bored with, kind of thing. So, anyways, I applied to different positions. I end up, getting a provincial government role, which is to where I am right now. I started working with them in 2022, and I've been there for, a little over a year right now. And I'm enjoying my role. I'm enjoying my team. I'm, enjoying everything about it. They've made me appreciate more, good working relationships and just, having people that have your back, kind of thing. So all of these experiences, I know I've been talking for a while, but they've
It's been
all,
great.
they've shaped me, right, in the way that I look at life right now. I'm not the same person who was go 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 all the time. I've learned to slow down. I've learned to trust in God's plans, because
Mm-hmm.
like I said, there are again many things that I thought were going to happen, and they did not happen the way that I thought they was going to happen. To me, it was really funny that the one, I didn't want to say in the US, right? And so I applied to every single place but the US. And then the one
Mm.
position that I applied to in the US is the one that now finally came through. And they held the
Mhm.
position for me for a while, right?
Wow.
And I'm just like, I mean, and you know how the process is. They have to prove to the US labor laws pretty much that they can't find an American that has those same skills.
Yep.
And I'm like, y'all, like it's a year
Look at
later.
God.
You could have reposted this thing, and I'm sure you could have found somebody else. But anyways, at the end of the day, like I said, when God is in things, that was why I actually made the move, because, like I said, my physical self wanted to stay in Nigeria. Like I just didn't want to go, but I, ended up coming back to the US, and so yeah, my like I said, number one big thing is trusting God, that
Yeah.
His plans, no matter how good you think your plans are for yourself, His plans are always the best.
Yeah.
They,
Yeah.
you can't imagine what His plans are for you, so yeah, that's, I just, pretty much allow that to happen, nowadays. And like I said, I try to be more present.
Mm.
And I'm an introverted person. You may not know that, because I
We
think
are
over the
like, we
years
know that.
I've learned to be social, right? um,
Mm-hmm.
and so a lot of people don't necessarily know that I'm very introverted. Like,
Mm-hmm.
there are people that knew me from when I was a child. I remember this person seeing, like, last year when I was home in Nigeria, this guy who's known me as a child came to visit, and I guess he didn't realize I was in the house. And he told my family, he was like, that she hasn't changed. That the same way you
Mm.
come to the house and you won't know that Loretta is in the house, it's the same way that you don't know that she's because I
Yeah,
like my own company. I can be indoors and I can find something to entertain myself, and I don't need other people to entertain myself. Pretty much,
right.
yeah. So, anyways, I have, like I said, learned to be a bit more present, to interact more with people, to just learn more about other people, to explore the world. My travels, being having those experiences of going back and forth. I don't necessarily like the experience of traveling itself, like going in planes and all of that, but I love getting to places and exploring, even if it's a place that I've been to before. There's always something to find.
Mm,
You can
mm,
never like 100% explore every single place that you've been to. There's always something I think that you can look at with a different eye.
mhm.
So
Learn.
those are ways that I guess my experiences, my travels in the past, pretty much since 2016 have impacted me in that way of being more present, trusting God more, and trusting man less.
Right,
Right?
right, right.
That whatever happens, God is who allows it to happen,
Yeah.
right? He will do it through man, but it's not the man who's making that decision. It's God that's making that decision on your behalf. And so, yeah, just embracing change.
That's a great testimony.
One of your questions I know was advice for people who may be scared of change. And I'm just like, my dear, one thing that I think age probably tells us is, as you get older, we understand that change is constant. That's
Right,
the only thing that's actually constant. Nothing else
right,
stays the same. You grow up, you change, we evolve. And
right.
so I've learned, or I'm learning. I don't know if I would say I'm 100% there yet, but I am learning to definitely embrace change more
Mm,
than I used to. I would say typically I'm a risk averse person.
mm.
I don't like risk. I'm that logical, analytical person, which is why, again, research works for me because these are the skills that you utilize. And I
Yep.
know, like, I look back and I'm like, it's funny how I didn't even know what I was going to end up doing, but this is, what I've ended up doing. Like, even at Unilag,
Right.
in the math and statistics department,
Mm,
that was the department I
mm,
got into. And
right,
so I'm like, years after, statistics is one of the things that I had to do, right? To get a PhD, I had to learn to do biostats. And that's one of the things I
right.
do now. Like data analysis is one of my roles. And so, like I said, I look back and it's just funny, the way that these things work out. And so
Honestly,
advice is just, like I said, embrace change. It's hard, I know, but this might be also be a cliche, but growth doesn't, I've learned also that growth doesn't come from your comfort zone. You kind of have to
mm,
step out of it and allow it, and trust the process, trust that it's going to be well.
mm.
It's going to be well. So
I
yeah.
love this so much. I don't even feel like we need another question. I had all these things I was going to ask, but we've already gone deep into this. And I think it's such a great testimony, honestly, because I think that for me, as you know, I made another move and I'm just like, why am I so unsettled? Why is my life so unsettled? Why can't God just tell me to go this way? Why do you have to do all of this turning around, turning around, turning around? I'm obedient. I will obey what you tell me to do if you tell me to do it. Why do we have to go all around, all around, all around? And, say it all the time that we're similar, but or at least we have some of those similar experiences in some of these, like, we're firstborns together, just all of the changes that has occurred and things like that. But it really is a great reminder that, learn to trust God. I mean, in that sense, I never had network, so maybe that, in fact, I feel like I'm the network, but I never really had that network. And in some ways, there's some things that I say now that I wish, I maybe took advantage of in networking, or like in knowing people who could have helped maybe shape career this way, that way. But again, I'm reminded that, to your point, if God wanted to do it, he would have done it. He didn't want to do it, which is why he did not do it. And so I'm going to ask you one more thing, because I think this is the juicy part that people may want to know. I think we should just do a part 2. What do you think? I think we should just do a part 2, because I really want us to go into, yeah, I really want us to get into a lot around relationships, right? Because you're saying all of this, and I know everybody wants to know, how are you doing this? And people always kind of make this assumption that you're only doing this because you don't really want a relationship. You can't have been in a relationship. How can you be doing it? Like, it's only girls that are not, all we PhD, and like we are so focused on our career. That's why we are moving up and down. If you like my mom will say, if you were in your husband's house, uncle, but I'm not in my husband's house. But I think I really want to, especially for someone who is also, in my career, but just from a career woman perspective, right? Even if you don't see yourself as a career woman, I don't think I've ever seen myself as a career woman. But how do you, how I think we'll just do a part two. I think so. I think I'm going to go with that. Because how do you make all of these decisions in light of being a female? The eggs are dying.
Yeah,
Eggs are dying. It's true. Biology. With that said, because like I said, I think we're just gonna do a part two.
yeah.
So you get to ask me one question. So that means you have to go find another question for next episode.
Oh, okay. One question. Well, what would you say has been like in terms like a career experience that has shaped you so far?
I would say it's this current one actually. I don't know if I mentioned it as much last year, but almost kind of similar, right? I took a job in Nigeria, having had a job here in the U. Well, okay, so I started that job in Nigeria. So I'll just tell the story. I started the job in Nigeria, and they said they were going to pay me naira, and that's the equivalent of $2,000, with like the equivalent of $2,000 for the year, by the way, or was it for the month? Per
Sorry,
month.
what? Eh?
Yes, per month. Per
Open.
month. So
Oh my.
I was like, you know what? God, 6 months. 6 months. That's what I'm giving this. And I trust you. You're going to do something. And this is to your point. Just do what God tells you to do. Because on the very, like, I done so I come in to do my COVID testing because I had to come to America because my papers weren't ready yet. So I had to come to America really quickly. I think I used that one to apply for my papers. I used that one to do COVID testing. And I used that one to take an interview that I also call her sis, and she's also in public health, had told me about in New York. And so that's how I did that. And, within the space, I got the job, right? And now they had offered to pay me, so $24,000 to $120,000, just to put it in perspective, right? So
Okay.
obviously it wasn't a question, right? But not only that, it was like, oh, that something that was supposed to be like a program manager or something, or they wanted to make me the director of something, whatever the program was at the time. I just want people who are hearing the story to do what God tells you to do. So that's how, on the very, like, it was the almost exactly to the day of 6 months, I now told my people in Nigeria that I got to go. And I loved my job in it. God, I loved it. God, I won't even lie to you. I loved what I did. And so obviously by the time I now did this thing, they're like, oh, you know what? You can't go. We'll match it. By the way, they're already paying people that amount. It wasn't even anything. But obviously me, I didn't know. And I didn't really care. I just thought, at the time, it's like, okay, let me help you out and stuff like that. And because I never saw myself in America, first of all, I never saw myself in America past, like, I was going to come, do my undergrad, do my master's, do my PhD, all of this, 10 years. I gave myself 10 years max in America and I was going to be done. And at this point, we're already 20 years in. No, actually, we're already like 15 years in. And I'm like, what? God, no. Like, you're sending me to Nigeria. Of course, you're sending me to Nigeria. So obviously, everything was a sign. Getting the job in the first place was a sign. The fact that it was in, so I have this, one of my favorite books is called Ken Follett's Third Twin, and
Mm.
it's a book around genetics and public health and behavior and psychology and all of that. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like, this is God. This can only be God. This is God. This is God. Mind you, I'd already accepted the other position and I'd come back to America to take this position. But then, I had met some of the guys who, especially the guys who were on the American side of the company, and they were like, like, this is a really good position for you. I mean, I get it, like, anything you do, you'll be great, but like, for us here, like, you get to grow with people who you're working together. And it was good because, public health. Public health is sometimes a lot of older people, right? Like, they're very, it's not many organizations that you go to that where you're finding people your age. In fact, now I'm feeling old now that I see some new converts coming in or whatever, because people typically just end up going to academia, right? So in practice, right, it's not always, and in fact, it's usually people that maybe have a medical degree together with their public health. It's always so kind of weird, right? So it's not even just straight public health, not straight young people. Like you're going and you're just like, excuse me, like you people are saying I should find boyfriend in career. I don't know find boyfriend when all the people here are girls and all the people here are old people. So now this is my current job. I'm using my eye. My eye is sharp. My eye is sharp. I'm getting
I just work when I want to work.
so yeah, because again, I like the job, I like the people I was working with, I like the staff that I'd been working with in Nigeria. I like the experience of I'm doing different things. So genetics is not what I studied or whatever. So learning from the geneticists and those molecular team and all of that. And then also putting something together because to your point, right? It wasn't just going to a 9 to 5 and somebody's telling you what to do and then you have to send it for approval to somebody. Like I was putting something together. I was part of that team. So I thought this is, and I felt like I could fail easy. Like, I don't know how to say it, but like I would have a little bit more support, right? With it because now we're working with a team of people who all wanted this thing to work, right? So I would feel better than being the sole person on this role. And I don't know. I think I in my mind there was something about being called a director in
Mm,
America versus being
mm,
called a director in Nigeria. I didn't really
mm.
care for the director in Nigeria. It was nonsense. It was just games. No offense. Like I knew the work I was doing. My work had like I was. If that's the case, I was director before they gave me the title, right? So it had nothing to do with anything, right? But there was something about this director title in my mind that
Mm.
was frightening in America. And it's really, it really just tells me that God was like, but I had, you were ready. You just didn't see it. And so let me tell you how bad it is. God has humbled me because now the title is program manager. I'm like, you see, when they were trying to give you title, not to say that it's about title, but I guess what I'm just trying to say is like, in my mind, I didn't feel like I was ready for this. Like, God, like that's too much. Like, who am I? And let me humble myself. Oh yeah, now I'm humble. And now you're just like, okay, God, but okay, now I'm humble. Can we move? Like, it's not because of title. It's the title brings a little bit more pay. I don't know, like whatever perks and stuff like that. But now, like all of that is lost because I had to come back to America to take a position, and you're basically starting again. Not starting again. I think obviously sometimes it's like I could hustle the hustle, but I think I realize also that maybe in his own, not maybe. I realize now, as per what we've been saying, that God is intentionally putting me here, and
Yeah.
so, just trying to be present, like you said, trying to accept that, okay, I got you. I'm on it. It's going to be okay. Take your time, do what you need to do, and I'm with you. So, long story, but yeah, it's kind of sort of similar, except you did the good thing. Me, I thought, don't get me wrong, I prayed about it.
What did God tell you to do? I don't think you told us what God wanted you to do or what you think of what he
No,
wanted you
no,
to
but I think that he had created that opportunity and that position, and I should have taken it. I think it was
do. Eh?
me wanting Nigeria so much. Like I wanted Nigeria more than anything.
You are saying you think he wanted you to take the position in America?
Right. Yes, because he had opened the position, created it in such a way where he got better pay. Like that was when I applied to. That was not the pay. That was not the title. That was. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like they, to your point, almost kind of similar where they created this thing for you now and matched it for you because they really like you and they think, okay, this is the perfect thing for you. And
Hmm.
then only for me to deny it because I wanted Nigeria so much. And don't get me wrong, I prayed, I fasted, I everything.
Yeah.
But I was like, I wanted Nigeria so much. I can't even lie to you. And I've said it so many times, and people are like, "Well, but he's not sending you to Nigeria now, so be coming down. Like, there's nothing you can do about it. If he does want you to go to Nigeria, he will send you to Nigeria. But it took. It's a very much a lesson learned on sometimes, like you said, our desires can't be more than what God. Like, no matter how good your own plan is or your own thoughts are, it can be better than God. And God knew what He was doing. But in His own way, He found me back into the same city, back in New York. So clearly, again, all glory to God. Okay, so we're coming back.
Yeah. This girl with strong head. Come back here. I'm saying that God is was probably like this
Yeah.
girl. You have strong head. Will not put you in trouble. Yeah, come back here.
I wouldn't even lie to you. Somebody told me that God said I was stubborn, and I was like, I believe it. I believe it. I'm
What
sorry, God.
sometimes I'm just like something just happened or someone say something and I just look up and I'm like, Father Lord, I know that was you. And I know you
Have
have it.
mercy.
God has a sense of humor and he can be he's laughing at us sometimes just because he's just like, just I have for you. That's why I brought you back this way. If I let you go and you ever find yourself.
For real. No, this is awesome. Thank you so much. So we'll do a part two, and don't worry, it'll be a totally different topic. So don't feel like it's going to be a part two, guys. Watch out for that. But we really need to get into this bit about relationship. I think it's going to be quite important. So thank you, sis, and we'll talk soon.
No problem.
Thank you for joining me in today's episode. Just like you would share with friends about a great book you read, don't forget to share this if you enjoyed it. Connect with us on IG and Twitter at TWWPcast and get details on the website at worldwithoutpeople.org. And hey, remember to make loving others the story of your life. Until next time, this is the world without people.